Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in 1 Timothy chapter 1, and we're continuing our study in verse 9. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we saw here in the first part, he says, knowing this, that the law, or actually in the Greek it's law, is not made for a righteous man. And we also noticed last lesson that people, it can be very deceiving how some people can do such horrendous things, and yet in other areas of their life they can be so good. And you sometimes wonder, how is it possible that this person could have committed that type of crime when I know what they're like at work, or I know I'm their neighbor and I know what they're like as a neighbor, and I can't understand, or I don't believe that they could commit such a crime as this. Even good people even seemingly bad people can, in an amount of their life, they can be very good, and on the outside they can put up a very good life. But we don't know what's happening inside the heart and what's going on in there. So he says, knowing that the law is not made for a righteous man. And now Paul here is going to name 15 different sins. Obviously, this is not an extended list of sins, but he names 15 sins, and we're not going to go into each one of them, but I do want to pick out several of them and take a little bit deeper look at these sins. And he says here, the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and the disobedient. Now, this Greek word for disobedient is anupotactos. Anupotactos. And it's a combination of several Greek words. It first begins with a prefix of an A. And A, of course, means negative. And then there's hupo, which means under. And then the next Greek word is tasso, which means to order under. Like hupotasso means it's like humility. You arrange yourself under, you humble yourself to God. But this is with the prefix A, it means not to be in order under something. It means to be insubordinate, not subject to the rules. So, this Greek word, anupotactos, is describing a person who does not want in their heart to be subject to the company rules, or to the house rules, or family customs, or state or county rules. They are an unruly person. The only rules they want to submit to are to their own rules, their interpretation of what life should be like. And they don't like the rules, whatever those rules are. If they're work rules, state rules, whatever it is, they have a disagreement. And this is describing a anupotactos person, a disobedient person, an unruly person. So he says, lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly. Now, this Greek word ungodly is asebase. Asebase. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Asebase. And this Greek word is a very, very strong Greek word. And it describes a person who is absolutely and actively against religion. They deliberately keep from God what rightfully belongs to him. So it would be like you go door knocking and you knock on somebody's door and the person says, well, I'm not really that interested in it. You can leave me a pamphlet or something and then, but I'm not really that interested. Okay. This is not acid-based person. An acid-based person, you go knock on the door, they're going to say, what? Get that religious stuff out of here. Get off my land. Get out. Go away. Get out of here, you crazy people. That's acid-based. Okay? They are ungodly, meaning they completely and totally reject the things of God. And it says they deliberately keep from God what rightfully belongs to him. And it's like when Jesus said to the scribes and Pharisees about paying taxes, about this coin, and Jesus said, well, whose image is on this coin? And they said, well, Caesar's is on it, right? And Jesus said, well, then you give to Caesar what belongs to him, and you give to God what belongs to him. And they were convicted in their heart because this coin had Caesar's inscription on it. So yeah, it belongs to him. But what Jesus was saying was that what he was saying without saying it was your very being belongs to God, and you owe your being to him. And yeah, this coin, don't put the value of this coin as being more important than the value of your own existence. You owe to God. God created you in the womb. He designed you. He made you. And you owe to him your very life. And render to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, but you give to God the things that belong to him. And these scribes and Pharisees, these people that Jesus was talking to when he was saying that, they were acid-based. They walked away rebellious in their heart, saying, we will not render to God the thing that belongs to God, which is our heart, our life. And they absolutely, deliberately did not give to God what they owed him, which was their hearts and their life. In their hearts, they have set themselves in array to do battle against God. Again, acid-base is describing, it's a very strong word. And it's not just an ungodly person, it's very ungodly, very rebellious against any kinds of religion, anything that has to do with God or the Word of God or Jesus, all right? So he says, to the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly, and for sinners. And then he says, for unholy and profane. Now, the Greek word for profane here is bebelos. It's bebelos. And its primary meaning is that which may be walked upon. So, it describes a person who allows themselves to be walked upon. It has that feeling where, if you picture in the Old Testament the tabernacle of Moses and all of the holy vessels in that tabernacle, the cups and the dishes and the plates and the things for the fire and all that stuff. Every one of those things was holy. Why? Because it was dedicated to God. It was to be used in the service of God. And if you were to go in there and take a cup out of the tabernacle and go out into your tent and drink or do whatever with that, or use one of the other implements of the tabernacle outside of its use for God, That's unholy. That's profane. That's using it in a profane way. And therefore, bebelos means a person who is open and accessible to whatever other people do and whatever they say. They allow themselves to be walked upon. They are walked on, and they become just like those around them who swear, who lie, who get drunk, who steal, and all other kinds of sins. They just go with the crowd. They don't stand out from the crowd and say, hey, listen, I was created by God. I'm going to give my heart to Christ. No, they reject the things of God, and they just go. They go with the wind, how it is. How's the wind blowing today? Well, I'm going with it, right? What are the people around me doing and saying and drinking and eating? I'll go with the wind. I'll allow people to walk upon me, and I will become like them. This profane person is the perfect example of what's called a secular person. They fit in with everyone around them, and yet they don't fit in with God. They don't want to fit in with God, but yet they don't want to stand out from the crowd, so therefore they become like the crowd. They allow the TV, they allow the music world, they allow the movie world, they allow all this to dictate to them, to walk upon them, how they are to talk, how they are to think, what they're to drink, what they're to eat. They'll just receive, and they'll allow the things of this world to walk upon them, and they become, it's like stamping on something in the ground, taking something holy, and then putting it on the ground and stamping on it, walking on it. It becomes an unholy, a profane thing. So then he says, for murders of mothers, murders of fathers, and murders of mothers. Now, the Greek word here for murders isn't limited to simply the single act of committing murder. But it is this Greek word is translated, it means to smite or to hit. And it means any kind of harm brought to your parents. It describes children who have lost all gratitude and respect for their parents. So when it says murders of fathers and murders of mothers, it's not limited to only simply the act of murder. Remember, Jesus said in the Gospels, if you hate this person, you've murdered them. Right? That doesn't kind of agree with what we on earth think that murder is. Murder is actually putting them to death, whether it's with a knife, a gun, or however, whatever. Murder means they are not living anymore, right? That's our definition of murder. But Jesus said, see, again, God says, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts, they're not your thoughts. And as a Christian, we need to understand what is God's definition of murder. And Jesus said, if you hate your brother or sister, you've murdered them. You've murdered them. Okay, now I don't understand it 100%. And maybe you don't either. But I trust the Lord that what he said is true. So, again, to be a murder of your father and a murder of your mother. Now, if we interpret that in the light of what Jesus said, then to lose all respect and all thankfulness and gratitude and to hate our parents is to murder them. Is to murder them. And so, we need to live our lives according to God's way of thinking. So, he says murders of fathers, murders of mothers, for manslayers, and then verse 10, for whoremongers. Now, whoremongers here, The Greek word is pornos, and it means a person who commits fornication. So a fornicator, a whoremonger. And then it says, for them that defile themselves with mankind. And this Greek sentence here refers to not only homosexuals and lesbians, but also to bisexuals. So it says here that it's those that defile themselves with mankind. You might think only homosexuality and lesbianism, but it also refers to bisexuality also. So, again, we get into what God says, and we interpret these things according to His mind and His thoughts, all right? We're going to continue these in the next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.